We are live.
Okay, hello everyone. I think we will start now. We waited for some minutes and we will start. Hi all. Hi everyone. We are here again to do presentation about one more presentation about our TMS system, Talent to Expert Journey. And today we want to tell you about technical side of the process. And the main players of today's presentation will be our development team from Latvia, from Liepaja. So guys, floor is yours, and you are welcome to tell about your experience with Like a Coffee and developing presentation, developing application with Like a Coffee. Go on.
Hello. Well, welcome to our presentation, and I'm glad you could find the time to join us. My name is Janis, and I would like to introduce the team which has been working on this project. Our team consists of 4 people. Each of us have done a little bit of everything, although each one of us have their own field of expertise. Emils has been working on most of the front-end functionality and back-end. Ulvis was working with different Google APIs, and he was also responsible for security features and most of the back-end functionality. Then there's Aija. She was working on some front-end features, and she did most of the testing. And I was focusing on design, user experience, and also I was acting as project manager. Last October, we started to work on this project, and I was selected as a project manager, but I'm also involved as a front-end developer. At the same time, because of our master studies, I was required to have an internship as project manager, and I'm really glad that Like Coffee provided me with this opportunity. This was my first experience as a project manager. I always wanted to do that, but I had no previous experience. And I have gained a lot of knowledge and experience, and I really enjoy being a project manager. In the end, I was able to successfully finish my internship, and I gained a lot of valuable experience. Well, Like Coffee, talent managers have a tailored approach how to acquire new talents, train them, manage and help them along their journey to become real experts in software development. There was a need to create an application which would help these new talents, and the managers would oversee this whole process of talent growth and increase their productivity. At first, the idea was to create a simple talent management system, but by the time the idea of this software was developed further, we came up with a more advanced version of the application, which would suit better the needs of the talent managers and their idea of this talent journey. At first, we were focused on functionality for data input. We created the structure of the project and authorization. After that, we worked on the initial version of the talent page, as it is the cornerstone of the project. When we had created the first form for input, we agreed that it's better to continue working on some additional features for the talent page instead of switching focus to other pages, because we will need the same features also on other pages. And when we were done with the talent page, we could create initial version of all the other pages much quicker, because all the logic was already there, and we just needed to adjust a little bit that we already had. When all the pages were done, we could implement additional features like synchronization with Google Calendar, connection to Redmine, and we also improved security and usability. We have finished working on the first version of the project, and we have just started to work on the second version. In the beginning, we got acquainted with the mockups to understand what kind of layout and functionality we are expected to create. Based on the mockups, I created a number of work items and also did an estimation how long I expect us to work on this project. Since then, a lot of requirements have changed. We have built a lot more than we planned at the beginning. And we were using agile methodology for this project. At first, we wanted to follow Scrum guidelines, but because we don't work at the same time, and each of us have also other commitments, the Scrum approach wasn't really for us. And since then, we are working closer to Kanban guidelines. We use Redmine for work items and time entries. At first, I was not fond of it, but I got used to it. In the beginning, there was no board in Redmine, and I really missed the Kanban board. But since we got that in Redmine, I'm quite content with it. And using Redmine was quite a struggle for us because we had no experience with it, and we were used to doing things differently. But now we are comfortable with it. So about design. At first, we were provided with mockups. We used them as guidelines to how the app should look. But during the development, a lot of new requirements came, and we decided how to develop the application and made sure that we keep the same style and feeling. It was really important for us that the app had good usability. Basic functionality is the same in all the pages, and that the users would not require any help while using the application. Since I really enjoy focusing on user experience, most of the time I was the one who was planning the layout changes, and I also wanted to work on the mobile version of the application. Here we can see the structure of the application. First, we need to log in, and after which we are directed to the dashboard page. And from the dashboard page, we can visit any of the pages visible in the left side column. In the second column, as an example, we can see the talent page. So from the dashboard, we go to the talent page, and there we have a list of all the talents. In the second tab, we have a list of archive talents, the ones which are not active anymore, and the data can be deletable. If we click on one of those talent items, then we can see all the information about the talent, history of projects, several evaluations, files, career, and so on. And now we will describe each of the domain sections in greater detail.
So we will have a demonstration for each of the main sections, and we're going to start with the most important section, which in our opinion is talents, because the whole system is about talent management. So when we move to the talent system, as you can see, we have a card for each talent that is available, and each of these talents, you can see basic information, for example, in which university they're studying, what are their social links, etc. And then, of course, we can click on each of these cards and go into each talent details, which shows more information, basically all the information we have gathered about the specific person. So when we open the talent details, the first thing we see is on the left side, there is all the personal information. So there is name, surname, all the contact information, social links, etc. We can have also language skill evaluation, which in this case is English language because that's the language we're working in. And on the right side, we can see information about person's status in company. So which mentor is assigned to the person, which phase are they in, what projects they're working on, etc. So there are a couple of topics that can be added, or we could see history, but currently there is no history for this person, so therefore nothing is shown there. We also have another tab, which is a personality tab, which is arguably the most important part in this section. In this tab, what we can see is the evaluation of this talent. So we can see the evaluation in chart form. We can see it either as a spider chart, or we can see it as a bubble chart. So currently this person has one evaluation, which you can see here in the bottom, which is shown. If we want to add another evaluation, we use the right side of the screen where we have the slider bars, where we can kind of show at what level each of these skills is for this person. There are multiple categories. There are 4 main categories in which talent is evaluated. It's logical thinking, emotional, creativity, and planning. And each of these categories has multiple subcategories. For example, logical thinking has programming languages, then it has infrastructure and databases, etc. And then each of these have even more subcategories where we have under programming languages are the most important skills and like nice to have, additional skills, etc. So each of these skills is evaluated from 1 to 10 on a scale from 1 to 10, and then it's calculated how this evaluation shows up on the chart. So, for example, I can take current evaluation, I can increase some skills if we assume that the person has gotten better at these skills. And we can save it as new evaluation, which would mean that we didn't have to move every single slider bar from 0 to something. We only needed to change those that the person has actually increased in. And then at the bottom, you can see that we have 2 evaluations. And if we would like to, we can also click both checkboxes, which allows us to see both evaluations at the same time. I guess I changed it too little, but you can kind of see that there are 2 overlapping evaluations, so we can see the growth of the person. Then one more thing is that there is a ability to print this, where we can access a template where all the personal information, contact information, and the evaluations are shown, and we can print this template, and it would be the same for every single person. So that is all I want to show you currently about the talent section. Next is going to be Emils, who's going to tell you about talent evaluations and their calculations.
First of all, the technically complex part of talent section resides in everything that we do for working with evaluation of talents, of course. Well, the whole evaluation logic is based on defining a set of skills that serve as a base unit to build up the score of talent, of course, as you can see. Probably an interesting detail worth mentioning is that skills are generally stored on an equal level, meaning both in front end and back end. The skills in our application have various importance in total score, as you could see, depending on filters they are subjected to. So as talent section is basically the largest section of our application, it has also had its share of bottlenecks to overcome indeed. The main bottleneck has probably been implementation of a formula for calculating talent's evaluation score. It's a really specific one. And most of the difficulty came due to the fact that formula had multiple iterations, so it had been updated multiple times. So each of those iterations required new changes to be made both in both front end and back end of application. Well, this is basically all we wanted to show you about the talent section. Another important, well, probably obvious part of our application is user section, and it will be presented to you by Janis.
Okay, the user page is actually quite simple. In this page, we can edit the basic information about the user. At the moment, all the users have the same level of access. The main users are the talent managers, but also all the shareholders can access all the content. The user can edit their profile information and login credentials. We have planned to create several access levels. For the users, and it's possible that at some point also the talents will have their own access of the application. And now Ulvis will tell you about authorization and backend implementations.
So as for the backend part of the user section, I will talk about GVT, or JSON Web Token. GVT is an open standard that defines a compact and self-containing way for securely transmitting information between parties as a JSON object. In other words, information is encoded. We use it to encode some user data and store the result in front end. This way, we authorize the person and make sure the person has access beyond login screen, can access restricted areas, routes, and so on. At the moment, we still consider this tool secure enough to use for current state of our TMS project. GVT itself is meant to provide more secure authentication, data storing, but some downsides could be that GVT is public for a long time, meaning any engineer or a hacker have enough time to find ways around the tool, and GVT was already part of one of our systems from the AngularJS times. But we believe that it's still good enough because the time proves that open source software is capable of handling itself. As for the backend implementation, in nutshell, requests which don't contain correct GVT has locked access to content, meaning it has multiple checks. Decoding, encoding data happens within backend. Also, multiple comparisons and future multiple roles ready project because of the rapid requests and what Janis said before. Meaning that implementing roles and other data within requests becomes really easy. This is it for the backend part of the user section. Next up, we have calendar section, which is going to be introduced to you by Aija.
Yep, so we're going to have another demo for the calendar section, which looks like this. We can see a calendar, and for each day, we can click on the day. And if we have a little yellow dot in the day, it means there is an actual calendar event, for example, a meeting. If we see a blue dot on the day, then it means we have some events coming from Redmine, some data, for example, logged hours, etc. If we click on a day, I'm going to click on the second one, which has both of these. Under events, we have a meeting, which comes from Google synchronization, so from Google Calendar. And in the Redmine entries, which is the blue dot, we have the activities that have been going on in the Redmine. So this is the main layout of this calendar. We can, of course, create new events where we get on the right side a little form where we can check attendees. We can write what's the location, what time it starts, what time it ends, etc. So this event would also automatically show up on the calendar. Then another feature we have for the calendar is we can switch between month view and the week view. So this is the month view where we can see every single day of this month. And then if we switch, we can see current week from Monday to Sunday. And in each weekday, again, we see all the events listed one under another. And again, very basic functionality. If we click somewhere away, we can click a button called Today, which allows us to return to current week or current month, so we wouldn't have to click all the way back. So it's not a lot, but it's a very necessary section. So Ulvis will now tell you more about the synchronization process we went through with Google Calendar.
To make the basic connection to Google services, one must have Google account. Then you need to use Google Cloud Console to enable APIs you need and create API keys for your API you choose to work with. If it is a service API key, you would use a single Google account for a backend of your project and manage data. But in our case, we went with OAuth 2. We needed to manage multiple accounts that connect to the services, and we wanted improved security. Let's go to the next slide. So what's an OAuth 2? An OAuth 2 is an authorization framework that enables applications to gain limited access to user accounts on HTTP services. So it's Google services, DigitalOcean, and so on. It provides a way to authenticate within the service by redirecting you to the service that hosts the Google user account, and then it authorizes you within the API you're accessing. Google Cloud Console also requires your API to have redirect rules and routes set up. Without them, user applications won't be able to authorize and receive any data. You would basically have an error. We also encountered some bottlenecks. We are working with Node.js in backend, of course. Google Node.js implementation is still in alpha version for most APIs. Only a working console-like application was shown as an example. This led to our own implementation of connection and authentication within services, which required time and a lot of debugging. Documentation was painful and it was awfully structured to begin with. This is it for the Google services part. Next up we have project section, which is gonna be introduced to you by Aija.
So, the project section, at the first it looks very much like the talent section, where we have a card for each of the projects. And we can see this list either as cards or we can see it also as a list. So if we have very many projects, maybe it's easier to view it like this, not with a giant cards like this. So we're going to go into one project, which is the current project we're talking about, the TMS system. And for the project, we can see all the basic information, the name of the project, how long have we worked on it, where can we view the current working version, etc. So on the right side, we can see all the people who have worked on this project. We have roles assigned to them. We can also see which mentor is responsible for mentoring this project. And also the list of technologies which are included in this project development. Then we have this section also synchronized with Redmine tool, where we get data from Redmine. For example, we can see how much, percentually, how much each person has worked on this tool. So as you can see, not everyone works the same amount of time. So we can also pick the start date and the end date for example, currently it shows the month of May, but we can also choose so it would show a whole year or maybe half a year. Then we also have entries from Redmine. So each person logs their time in the Redmine tool, and then it shows how many hours they have logged and also on which item they have logged the time, who has done it, and when they have done it. And then the last thing we have in the project section is the versions of the project. So you can see we have quite a lot of versions for this project, and each of the projects, when we click on it, we can see what items have been made in this specific version. We can also click on the eye icon, where we can see the details about each of these work items if we need any more expansive information. So that is all. Next is going to be Emils, who is going to tell you more about the synchronization process with the Redmine tool.
So this section relies heavily on integrating Redmine API to retrieve large part of its data that needs to be displayed here. However, it's essential to mention that it has been ensured here that the project section can also work on its own. The integration is not enforced. While we can display log time entries of talents here, as well as use graphical tools for measuring the amount of work done by one talent relative to the others, it's not exactly always a straightforward approach to retrieve the necessary data from the API here. Our backend often takes care of making multiple consequent requests to retrieve all the necessary pieces of information that have to be displayed as additional fields for time entries of talent. The most important bottleneck with Redmine integration has been reliance on unique identifiers when querying from data from Redmine. The API mostly doesn't offer searching for full names or partial strings. This means that we had to implement mechanics that allowed us to retrieve and store Redmine identifiers in our own application in order to use the API. The next section we are going to talk about is university section. Janis will shortly introduce it to you and explain its basic features.
Okay, so let's go to the university section. It contains contact information about Like Coffee partner universities, study paper topics of Like Coffee talents, and the calendar where we can see different kind of promotional events in our partner universities. Let's open up one of the university profiles. So here we can see the basic information about the university, and we can adjust it and so on. And on the right side, there's a list of reference study paper topics, and below that there is a list where we can add different kind of links to any page related to this university. And at the bottom there are options to add any notes and additional information about university, contacts and their information and so on. One nice feature which we have in this page is that we have an autocomplete for location. So when we type in country or city or the exact address, we have an autocomplete which suggests us any options. And when we have edited the address, on the right side we have Google Map where we can see the exact location of this university. And now Ulvis will tell you more about how we implemented Google Maps and autocomplete.
So for the Google Maps, we use the API keys for Google services. Same way we use Google Calendar API, just with a service key. We request the data for specific location with a request and receive it within backend. Data is then sent to frontend for sorting and listing and whatever we need at that moment. This is it for the Google Maps part. Emils will continue.
All right, so one more thing to mention about this section. Quite a common part to be seen in our application, if you're watching the presentation carefully, is usage of various lists in form. In fact, list of notes that you could see in university details form, we were using it as the first one of the kind, and it has been reused as much as possible for easy implementation elsewhere. This meant that logic behind addition of notes had to be optimized for higher reusability. All right, now we are done explaining the basic cases found in the university section. Now we go back to Janis. He will show to you the next important part of application, which is marketing section.
Okay, so let's check out the marketing section. In a nutshell, marketing section is a fancy file upload. At least I like to call it like that. The talent managers wanted to have a place where they could store all their files and other data related to marketing activities. They can edit and add new categories if needed, and be in total control of how they want to store and organize all of their files. The same applies to the links. Uh, we have a place where we can store any kind of links, like videos, social media pages, other websites, and it's also possible to add new categories for any kind of links. It's worth mentioning that we have integrated drag and drop functionality for file upload, and we can upload files not only from our computer but also from Google Drive. And now Ulvis will share his experience regarding Google Drive, and after that Emils will continue about marketing section.
The application integrates with Google Drive the same way as it does with Calendar API. We use OAuth2 for authentication, of course. After authentication, a dialog for Google Drive opens up in the front end. We fill it up with information about root folder of Google Drive for the authenticated user. We provide a way for a user to go into folders and explore his drive just like he would in a Google Drive. This way, he can easily find his files and data he wants to upload. Key features are upload and sort, pagination support in the front end, item per page support, and dynamic table data adjustment from Arise. This is it for the Google Drive part. Next up, we have file upload functionality, which is going to be introduced to you by Emils.
So you can see the larger number of file upload controls being used in marketing section. However, the underlying logic doesn't differ much from anything that can be seen in other parts of the page. The main difference here is inclusion of filtering tags in file metadata. It allows us to categorize files so that they can be grouped and found easily in this section. Anyhow, speaking of the file upload functionality in general, in our application, we usually deal with two kinds of files: pictures that serve as avatars, and various document attachments that may be viewed in forms, or like in this section, in a specific list designed for that. Both types of files are stored similarly. The main bottleneck for the file upload logic comes from the requirement that dictates that we use a specific service to store our file data. This means we had to implement storage of file metadata, which allows us to link file data correctly, in a separate manner. Usage of a specific service for the file data storage also meant we had to include more steps in the whole chain of file interactions than we usually do in other projects. Another factor that made file upload such a complex feature was the necessity to store files on the fly. This means, for example, including multiple attachments that have to be saved with a freshly created data object that it's part of. Also, files in our application are saved while being independent of the changes made to an existing form. One final thing that's worth mentioning about file upload refers to the usage of avatars in our application. Firstly, we allow editing of avatars everywhere. This means we had to implement logic to always have the original source file to be at hand for it to be available later on. And secondly, it's possible to use picture URLs for avatars instead of actual files, as demonstrated in earlier presentations. This creates necessity to filter out such use cases in backend that use only file metadata without need to access any further content before handing it back to client side. All in all, I consider file upload functionality implementation to be the most extensive part of the project's underlying logic. It's really big. And most likely we will build more things on top of it in future, as well as further increase the usability for the logic components. As it could be seen in marketing section, there were multiple possibilities for categorization of links and files. And you might think, how do you make sure that files and links always fall under the right category? There could be, after all, cases where user chooses to remove categories. Well, that's actually why filters like AND-categorized exist. Those are actually taking care of such possibilities, and it's possible to avoid additional cleanup due to that. Well, this concludes our view on marketing section. Now we return to Aija. She will provide an insight for part of our application that is known as group section.
All right, so group section. Groups. Groups are basically teams of people who are working on specific projects. So we can currently see here 2 teams, and we're going to look into one of them. So if we click a team, on the top we could see all the people who are included in this specific team. If we click on any of the people listed here, we could go to their talents page, talents detail page, which I showed way early in the presentation. Then we can also add notes for the group, which currently there are none, but we could technically do that. We can also see who is the mentor for this specific group. We can edit group details, send a group email, which is really nice because with one click, we can add everyone to a mailing list, everyone who's included in this group. And it saves time on communication. We can also move the group to archive if the group is disbanded or some otherwise. And we can also see the projects that this group has been working on. So currently this group, Liepaja Team 1, has been working on 2 projects, the TMS and another one. So this is all that I want to demonstrate for you from this section. And now we're going to go to Ulvis, and he's going to talk about the underlying structure for the group section.
So the backend work focused on grouping up certain ideas of talents, mentors, projects, and a few others, storing those together to make up a group. Also, mentor and talent models receive their own unique relationship ID from groups to be able to request a talent or a mentor model and receive their groups they are assigned to for future project expansions. Then the next slide. The downsides. In the group section, backend we encountered a lot of cases where too much nested code was produced. Groups contain mentors, projects, and talents. Like I said before, all of those need updating too. At the moment, we decided to do the updating asynchronously to avoid too much nested code, which is hard to read and overlook. As application grows bigger, there might be a need to upgrade it with some clever and more better ways to update other models within our backend. We refer to the nested code as backend hell. Fallback hell, I'm sorry. This is it for the backend part of group section. Next up, we have a topic about implementation of internationalization, which is going to be introduced to you by Emils.
As you might have noticed, and as I have mentioned, reusability in application is one of the key points we had to consider during development. Well, internationalization is one of the implementations that came alive due to that thought. While our application is English-oriented, we have created base to have it possible to add more languages in future if a need arises. And this is done by principle, as can be seen in presentation slide. Firstly, the JSON files are created with key value pairs, 1 file for each language. And then keys, which are same to every language, are used in HTML template. It's as simple as that. That's it for this. Next topic we would like to discuss is testing in our application, and it is Aija who will present it to us.
So when we talk about our software testing methods, we are using multiple dynamic testing methods to ensure the quality of our application. So upon completing any of the work items, it is obviously tested by the creator in the development process, but afterwards it's also tested by another team member who wasn't involved in the development. So this ensures us that we get multiple opinions on implementation of each of the work items. Additionally to that, we also create end-to-end tests for each of the major sections of the application. This allows us to test the flow of application and make sure that the task can be executed from the beginning to the end as it's been designed, and there are no hangups anywhere. The creation of end-to-end tests is quite a time-consuming task, but then again, once they're created, they can be run as many times as we need without much time invested. It's basically we click a couple of buttons and the tests run automatically on their own. Also, if some of the end-to-end tests are failing after adding a new feature, we can know that the integration of this new feature has not been successful because it's breaking other parts of the application. So we know that it needs to be fixed at that moment. We have created also reusable parts for end-to-end tests, for example, authorization of the user, because if we want to go from the beginning to the end of any functionality, we have to first log in to the application. And so we wouldn't have to write the login feature in every test. We have it stored in one file, and then we can reference that file and execute the login through this external file. So end-to-end test creation. For this, we're using a software called Protractor, which is an end-to-end test framework for Angular applications. And this allows us to automatically run tests in real browser and interact with the application as a user would, without actual user interaction. So we write a sequence on how the test should be interacting with our application. For example, where we need to write in the application web address, or maybe we need to click a specific button. And then this Protractor software executes all these commands without user interference. So the software automatically clicks buttons, switches to tabs, etc. So Janis already talked a little bit about the Agile board in the beginning of the presentation. So each work item starts on the board with a status new. So it's a new untouched item that has been just created or created some time ago. Then as it progresses through the different stages of development and testing, it has its status changed to in progress. So while it's in progress, then there is a person assigned to developing this item. And when they have completed development, and when also the item has gone through all the testing phases, it is changed, the status is changed to resolved. So firstly, it is tested while being developed by a programmer. So then when the item is considered complete, it is passed on to another person who is not being involved in the development, and the other person also tests the same item. Then if the item is considered well done and we think it might not break anything, we integrate it into the rest of the system. And then we have to test again. We have to test the item, and we also have to test all the known dependencies to make sure that nothing has broken in the process of integrating this new feature. So if the item passes the integration testing phase, it is marked as resolved, and then at a later date, since end-to-end test creation is such a time-consuming process, they are created at a later date. So also to ensure that our application meets all the requirements that have been set out for us, it is regularly tested by its future users, so our talent managers. This allows the end users, first of all, to get accustomed to all the features gradually, so they don't have to learn the whole system in one go, because they get access to new features as they are built. And also it provides developers with constant feedback, which allows us to stagger error fixing over time instead of receiving multitudes of error reports at once and then be stuck in error fixing phase for a month or so. It is also useful over the course of development that the new features are added, and then we get instant feedback so we can improve the features that we have just added. So it's not only fixing errors, but it's also improving on what we see, because not always is it possible to imagine a feature exactly perfectly how it should be. We start off with an initial version and then we build upon it until it's perfect. Then also there is an in-application bug reporting feature. So it eliminates needs for emails and external communication ways. If the bug is reported inside of the application, it gets sent to Redmine tool, where it can be reviewed and then either resolved really quickly, or maybe a new work item is created for fixing this specific issue. That is, in a nutshell, everything about testing and the testing process. So now Janis is going to tell you about the future plans of our system.
Okay. At the moment, we have started to work on the second version of this project. There are a lot of new requirements and ideas. Unfortunately, some of us have to dedicate most of our time to studying. But luckily, we have some new team members who have just joined us, and they are already valuable assets to our team. They have been preparing for a couple of months by taking part in some online lessons about MinStack, and now they are able to showcase their newly acquired skills. Because of them, we can keep the project development rate at the same level, and yeah, by the time we are all back together, we will just develop much quicker. And now our mentor Janos will tell you about his experience regarding this project.
So, hello everybody. Me as a mentor, who I am, I started programming back in 2009, and that time I started with Oracle database. But I guess this is not so interesting for you. Main part that you should know about me, that I am working with MinStack for the last maybe 4 years, 3-4 years. And there I gained some experience with which as the mentor, I was handing over my experience to team. Here I must mention that the team we meet the team already with some knowledge they had. So really I didn't have to pass experiences like, let's say a simple example, how to write a proper switch case statement. But mostly I had to pass my experience, which are more like functional, how part of the screen should work, how the places in the application should work, etc., etc. There are some pros and cons working like this. You must know that I'm not situated in the same location as the team members are. I'm situated in Hungary, in Budapest. So the cons are that I'm not physically present in the team. I'm missing these small chit chats or afterward beer sessions and so on. The positive is that we are kind of international. I get a chance to learn new cultures, new people, new stuff, and learning. I'm continuously learning by the feedback of the others, and that's a good thing. And I place this communication somewhere in between too. I think that as a mentor, for me, communication is the most important. As I mentioned, that I'm not there. So it's very important that we exchange messages through some mediums like Slack or having Hangouts call weekly. We have a weekly organized Hangouts call where we are discussing about last steps, what has to be done, what have been done, what are the difficult challenges, and also as I mentioned, there is Slack where we can quickly, by saying quickly, relatively quickly change information. I say relatively quickly because it's kind of like an asynchronous communication, that somebody has issues, putting it in, and then who can answer on the fastest time, that person will answer that question. Yeah, I think that's about mentoring, and now I would like to give back word to Yevgenia.
Thank you guys for your story. What I want to share with you is our stories in our blog and on a YouTube channel where we were telling about the whole process of TMS and the whole idea born and the process went. And now we have shown you our demo. So thank you very much for your being with us. It's a part of our life work balance. Thank you, and see you later in our тише, our live sessions.
Okay, we close we close our live session. Thank you, Evgenia. Thank you, all of you guys, and let's keep in touch on our social channel and on our blog. Have a nice evening. Bye.
Bye. Bye.